into authentic conversations about ourselves and our community, exploring topics that uplift and inspire us. From personal growth to social change. So grab your teacup and get ready to join the conversation.
orgies, flying people that are look like willing participants in this orgy. That's a huge distinction. And I said it yesterday that I imagined that Diddy's
I was on
defense
mute.
counsel was gonna get up
Here
there
is
and
the
make a joke
man.
about the
That was
1,000
the
bottles
man
of baby
that,
oil Rico. And
they
if they
said
want to
was
make the
doing
argument
the
that
drugs with, or selling,
distribution
or
is
that,
just I gave somebody a
he
hit of
only did
ecstasy at the
drugs
orgy.
for Brandon
I mean,
Paul.
okay, if
Like
legally
last week
speaking or
on
not, that's gonna
and
rise to the level that they
against
need to
Diddy
convict them. But at the end of the
that
day,
had
people are
immunity.
not used to seeing that. You're used to seeing distribution, someone selling drugs, someone committing an act
Right
associated with
here,
organized crime.
this is Brandon Paul, okay? And he was supposedly a drug mule for Diddy. And he was like an ex sports player or whatever. Didn't really have any direction after that. Diddy picked him up and had him picking up drugs and bringing it to and fro. Okay. However, it was not ever, to be, but believed to have been more than just personal consumption between him and freak off people. None of to the level of like distribution, manufacturing, and kilotons or no shit. So.
And to make the distinction that my client is sitting here on trial, and at the end of the day, they're charging him with distributing drugs at the orgy, having orgies, flying people that are look like willing participants in this orgy. That's a huge distinction. And I said it yesterday that I imagined that Diddy's defense counsel was gonna get up there and make a joke about the 1,000 bottles of baby oil, and he did. 1,000 bottles of Astroglide off the streets. And that's exactly what I would do. You need to highlight the distinctions between what people are used to seeing when it comes to RICO and what this case is, because they're miles apart.
Alexis, I want to get your thoughts on what Mauricio just said. Do you see the RICO here? Because they're saying basically Sean Combs, it's the Combs enterprise. They're all his underlings working to accomplish and commit crimes on behalf of Sean Combs. Do you see RICO here?
I personally do see RICO here, but I agree with Mauricio. It is a tough pill to swallow for this jury. First of all, juries have a hard time understanding RICO when it's clean and you don't have relationships and then you don't have all these other sensational facts. So, I mean, I think it's going to be hard for the government to get that conviction because of that. But I'm seeing RICO. I'm seeing the elements and that the government has put forth on that bingo RICO card, as I call it, and they've met that. But I'm not so sure. I really am leaning towards the fact that I don't think a jury is going to understand that.
And now do you see a lot of them changing their tunes? So many people were quick to just completely throw Diddy under a federal prison. And now that, they're being made to see things for what they really are, a lot of them are changing their tunes. Drop it down in the chat, your teacups. We are reviewing the closing arguments of Diddy's days are almost done. They are deliberating. Starting next Monday, y'all, the jurors will retire to the chambers of deliberation. And we're going to hopefully see next week what the outcome, acquit or convict.
You have wishy-washy. You have people with relationships and then they don't. But remember, somebody could, even a spouse, could say at one moment they consent to sex and the next moment that they aren't consenting to sex and now we have rape. So we also could have a situation where individuals who are doing drugs, but then you are giving them drugs without their consent at the moment. All of this clouds the issue. There's a lot of toxicity when it comes to relationships. There's no doubt. But also, even with, say, a girlfriend that's working for your business, you can have a relationship. If you're not appropriately paying that individual and you're forcing them to work, beyond the hours that are set forth, then, that still is potentially forced labor as well as violating employment laws. So, I mean, but it's not clean cut. We don't have people being kidnapped like we see on TV, or we don't have individuals. Also, they did not have the co-defendants named as defendants, which I think also is confusing to the jury.
Well, they did say somebody was kidnapped. So they did say that Capricorn Clark was kidnapped. So we do have that. But yeah, I get what you mean too. And we don't have the co-conspirators testifying. We don't have them flipping on their
Of
boss.
course they will
And I
flip it
think
as they
that's
changing
pretty
their
interesting
tune.
too.
I
So,
would
you know,
definitely been somewhere
they
looking
called,
crazy for
you know,
Cass.
KK a
Girl.
co-conspirator, but
Diddy,
they
okay.
didn't see her.
Imagine,
So it's-
sippers, Diddy already being the person that he's known to be, you know, violent, monstrous, boisterous, argumentative, you know, aggressive. Imagine Diddy now coming up off of this, what he has, if he gets acquitted. Let's say he gets acquitted. You know, what is his temperament going to be coming out and having to go home to do, you know, whatever life will look like now on an acquittal? He's going to be an evil bitch. So, you know, I would definitely be changing my tune too if I was a lot of people sitting around somewhere in the Diddy trial. So
it's kind of hard to wrap your head around it, I think. I want to talk about our poll results here. Let's talk about our poll results. We've got some polls we're putting up today, guys, as we always do. So our first poll asked, did any released exhibits or testimony significantly impact your view of the case? 51% said, no, it did not impact me. 27% said, yes, it changed my opinion. 20% said it's hard to say. 527 of you voted in that poll. Thanks so much. We'll do another poll. We're going to get to your questions now. So let's get to the questions. And please keep dropping your questions in the chat, and we'll get to as many of them as we can. So we always love taking your questions. Our first question, Bradford Cohen, is from Smarty Pants 1225. Why did AUSA go for 8 hours yesterday? I thought she was only supposed to do 4 hours worth of closing arguments.
So that is kind of up to the court. Generally speaking, in federal court, they keep very, very tight schedules, very tight guidelines. The judge says, hey, you can go for this amount of time, 4 hours, 3 hours, 2 hours, and they try to keep to that guideline. It's not set in stone, though. So if she is going over new items, if she's not just beating a dead horse, which I don't even understand how you can go 8 hours in this case with the evidence that I've seen without beating a dead horse. And then don't forget, they still have the other side of the sandwich. So that means they do the closing now, defense goes, and then they have a rebuttal. I think that 8 hours is obnoxious. I don't think that helps a jury at all. I think a jury, especially in today's day and age, with individuals that are used to looking on their phone, looking on the computer, getting cliff notes to things, my belief is if you can't close a case in 3 to 4 hours, anything after that, I don't even think it should take 3 to 4 hours, but anything after that is just white noise. So an 8 hour closing to me is obnoxious. I don't think it's needed, especially where you have a rebuttal on the other side. The jury may be exhausted from hearing from that prosecutor unless they put a new prosecutor on for the other side of the sandwich, which oftentimes they do. Yeah. I don't see the benefit in it. The judge obviously can say, hey, listen, she's still going into new areas of, of items, of issues, of evidence. So I'm going to allow it. Then the defense goes, he can't say to the defense, hey, listen, I'm only limiting you to 4 hours. Again, if the defense is coming up with new theories and new items, he's going to let them go too. I just don't see how you get to 8 hours worth of closing with the evidence that's presented and the witnesses. Even if you go through every single witness, which I don't think you need to, I think that speaks a lot for the prosecution. I think it speaks a lot for the government's case. They are desperate here. And I think the prosecution, if they lose, even if they lose the RICO count or their sex trafficking count, and he's convicted on 2 of the 3 or 1 of the 3, I think they lose a lot of face. To me, this was a state case that got injected with steroids.
Exactly. Thank you. What we have been sipping over here on Tanisha Talks Tea, the state dropped the ball. They should have been, looking into Diddy or whatever. Look, we heard they may have been on the take from Diddy. Who knows? But unfortunately, they didn't. Statutes have now exceeded things like that. And then the feds are like, oh, okay, I guess we'll try to come in and see what we can do. So
pick it up, which often the Southern District of New York does when it's a high-profile case.
And I want to clarify, I don't think it went 8 hours. I think it started around 10. There were some breaks in there, plus a lunch break, and court ended before 5 p.m. So I think all in all, it was less than that. So I think we need to take that into account. It may have felt like 8 hours because we can't watch it. And the court day really started at 9 or so because the attorneys met with the judge beforehand. So I think we need to clarify that they weren't up there, talking the jury to death for 8 hours straight. So I do want to be clear on that point. I want to give you another update, everybody, from court. We have another court update. Here we go. Mark Agnifilo told the jury, didn't Mia go work for Madonna? And she did. After she left Sean Combs, she testified that she did work for Madonna for a time. And he said, that's how people use personal assistants. I don't expect we're going to see Beyonce in CVS. The assistants buy the Astroglide. If it's not what the company is doing, that is not a racketeering act. I'm going to RICO. Agnifilo then said there's no evidence of possession with intent to distribute drugs. David James said he's in Saint-Tropez. He's asked to get an 8-ball of cocaine. I asked him anything to do with Sean Combs. He said no. He kept it from him. Why would he hide it? Combs's Agnifilo then says it's people in creative fields. People in creative fields do. It's not racketeering. I'm going to talk about Cassie. Can you sex traffic your girlfriend? He said maybe if you push them into prostitution, but he's not making money from it. Agnifilo then goes on to say, Jane has some texts that are very anti-hotel night. Cassie, she doesn't. People are in love. People are having sex. Let's say your partner wants to do something and you don't. Where does that land? Cassie wanted this, including to be close. Agnifilo continues, it's like my wife is from Los Angeles. I hated LA. Now I love Los Angeles. Sorry, that's how it happens. Cassie, she is a beautiful, sexy person. She was with Michael B. Jordan, like the most handsome man in the world. She is not messing around. Agnifilo continued, Cassie is not clutching her pearls. Pardon me. That was a quote. This is how I am intimate with the man I love. You could come to love that. You want to be close. Yesterday they said some she might have wanted. Oh, they said can, Daniel Phillips, and Intercontinental. Agnifilo then said, if she liked 75, can number 76 be sex trafficking? Talk about going 0 to 60. Nothing said to him. She doesn't want to even do these again. Mr. Donaldson cross-examined Daniel Phillip. Let's look at the text. Sean asks, are you horny? Okay, so Mauricio, from what you hear there, he's saying, look, Sean Combs is not going to go, like Beyonce would not go to CVS or wherever and buy his own freak-off supplies. That's just not how this works. Do you find what he is telling the jury compelling? He is saying Cassie was into this. We have text messages that show that.
I think he's doing his job. I think it's important to, explain to a jury that there's nothing wrong with an assistant going to buy, Astroglide and baby oil. But that's just part of it. That's just part of the allegations here. And whether you can sex traffic your girlfriend, you can. You totally can sex traffic your girlfriend. And I don't think that the law requires you to directly profit. You got to get some kind of gain from it. It doesn't have to necessarily be money. And in this particular instance, it was because P. Diddy is some deranged pervert that wants, three different men to have sex with his girlfriend.
From court, we have another court update. Here we go. Mark Agnifilo told the jury, didn't Mia go work for Madonna? And she did. I think we need to take a quick break. We will be checking in with Sierra Gillespie here very soon.
Charges stay open. It's not like they close the case because they can't get you back. So there is no real time limit on that. They'll wait. They'll wait it out as long as it takes.
And they were talking, oh yeah, those guys, they're paid $20 an hour to be wearing these things. And I was like, oh wow, okay.
is obnoxious. I don't think it's needed, especially where you have a rebuttal on the other side. The jury may be exhausted from hearing from that prosecutor unless they put a new prosecutor on for the other side of the sandwich, which oftentimes they do.
Yeah.
I don't see the benefit in it. The judge obviously can say, hey, listen, she's still going into new areas of, of items, of issues, of evidence, so I'm going to allow it. Then the defense goes, he can't say to the defense, hey, listen, I'm only limiting you to 4 hours. Again, if the defense is coming up with new theories and new items, he's going to let them go too. I just don't see how you get to 8 hours worth of closing with the evidence that's presented and the witnesses, even if you go through every single witness, which I don't think you need to. I think that speaks a lot for the prosecution. I think it speaks a lot for the government's case. They are desperate here. And I think the prosecution, if they lose, even if they lose the RICO count or their sex trafficking count, and he's convicted on 2 of the 3 or 1 of the 3, I think they lose a lot of face. To me, this was a state case that got injected with steroids and the feds decided to pick it up, which often the Southern District of New York does when it's a high
defense thought shouldn't have come in, so that came in. So those are the various bases, but it's really difficult because not seeing a live stream, we didn't really, we can't really say exactly what happened specifically. But I did want to comment to the Free Britney. Do you think those people are being paid $20 an hour too? Or they
I don't know.
Recycle the shirts.
I don't know. I mean, maybe they just like the shirts. I think maybe we need to have Sierra go say like, "Hey, what's going on?" Because I don't know. The $20 an hour thing is interesting to me. But yeah, Britney has been free for a while, and that was LA. So I'm confused. So I think we need to get to the bottom of this. I'm going to, Sierra, if you're listening, maybe you could figure this out for us before we come back to you. I know she's probably listening. But yeah, it's weird. I don't get it. I really don't get it. I don't get it. Alexis, one thing that I think is interesting is that Alexandra Shapiro, the attorney who has been with them with the defense team, I think that's what she specializes in, is appellate work. So she's there, obviously, taking notes the whole time and advising and making arguments. That's not something you often see, right?
In high profile cases, and if you have the money to actually, as he does, to have that, yes, then you would want an appellate attorney there taking notes in preparation for that appeal. So that does not surprise me at all. It's just most people don't have the ability to pay what we're estimating is $100,000 plus a day for a legal team to defend them.
Yeah, I want to know exactly how much this is costing. I'm sure it's got to be in the millions. You know that. I mean, these are high-powered attorneys. He's got the Atlanta crew with him, the Georgia crew, Brian Steele, Nicole Westmoreland. So there's a lot of legal muscle here. Let's get up to you now, Bradford. Our next question is from IAM 1035. If alleged co-conspirators, Bradford, of human trafficking flee to Bali and other places with no extradition, how long does that policy last? Well, we don't know. We don't even know if anybody else would be charged in this, even though they've been called co-conspirators.
Yeah, and if you go to a country with no extradition, like Morocco, say, and there's no extradition to the United States, there is no time limit on that. If you get charged, the charge stays open. There's a very famous case out of Las Vegas that was an interesting one, where a young lady drove off in a Brinks truck with, I think, $10 million. And she ended up somewhere in Europe with a fake passport for 10 years. And I think they negotiated her return to the United States. But they charged her, way before she left. And those charges stay open. It's not like they close the case because they can't get you back. So there is no real time limit on that. They'll wait. They'll wait it out as long as it takes. Maurice knows. I know. I've had cases that are 20 years old, Fed cases that are 20 years old. Guy disappears to wherever, and later, for some reason, that individual gets an itch to travel to France or travel someplace else, and then they get caught at the border and they get sent back. And of course, they attempt to try the case, and sometimes they're successful. So right now, we don't know of anybody else that's being charged. That may change depending on what happens with this verdict, or it might not change. You just don't know until the government decides to go forward or not go forward. My guess is no one else is going to get charged in this case. I think that they've had enough of the Sean Combs saga.
I'm sure. Mauricio, here's a question for you. I know you're a defense attorney, but I think this is an interesting question. It comes from Jan at Canem 8485. What will happen to the 70 civil lawsuits against him if he's convicted? I think there actually might be more than 70, but I lost count a long time ago. So what would happen to those civil suits? Obviously, those are civil lawsuits. That's totally separate from this federal case.
Those lawsuits are not going to be affected. They will continue. The only thing is that the people that are suing him in civil court, they see him as a deep pocket, because that's what he is. And the conviction, little by little, he's dwindling. So his assets are dwindling, but it doesn't affect it. Those cases are going to move forward. And I guess now they have the additional benefit that the person that we're suing has been convicted of certain criminal offenses that tie into whether or not a jury is going to find them guilty of the civil cases. Now, the question is whether or not, how could he be present during those civil matters, because he's going to be incarcerated. As far as I know, and I could be mistaken, I don't think that that's going to affect them. I think that they could move forward. I think that they could try to, have him appear via Zoom, or try and do motions to have him transported from the federal system to a civil court, which they will not do. You could try and do it, but everybody that practices criminal defense knows how difficult it is for the feds to transport people. But as far as I know, those civil actions will not be affected. And if anything, they could be benefited in the sense that now everybody knows that he has been convicted for sex trafficking and other crimes.
Very interesting. We have another update from court.
So they are saying, before we get this next update, that if Diddy is convicted, those lawsuits will push through. They will get his black ass somewhere to be held accountable if need be for whatever lawsuits that will push through. Lady up here on the right, well, my right, yes, left, says that, there are 70 plus lawsuits right now and counting. I know one was just submitted on Monday against Diddy and his son. Okay, let's keep sipping tea with Tanisha Talks Teas this evening. We are wrapping up the week for the Diddy trial, y'all. They are down to the very seconds, right? Coming in hot on Monday, we will be live to see what all is all for the diddler. Will he get acquitted or will he get convicted? Let's stay tuned. In the meantime, we're sipping this tea currently on the live closing arguments of the defense for the P. Diddy X trafficking trial, USA versus Sean Combs Day 32. Let's get it. Oh, remember, like and subscribe. Now let's get it.
Court. Here, Mark Agnifilo is talking about one of the witnesses in this case. And she says, yes, she talks about fantasies. This is their lifestyle. She writes, I'm not going to do too many of these. My mother would. And then she writes about, being turned on. They are doing this together. I'm going to play part of the video. Agnifilo then says, in this intercontinental video, this would be Cassie, it's more likely than not, it is Combs's phone. And they're talking about, because there is a phone, an interaction over the phone in this video. Here she is. I am not going to show him throwing her down. You've seen it. I am not hiding it from you. Now there is a phone, because you do see him in the video take a phone, and the defense has contended this was all over her taking his phone. It had nothing to do with her leaving a freak off or anything like that. Agnifilo says, and here now, a well-known man sitting in his towel and socks. Looks like Cassie is saying, you're being a fool. Go back to the room. Look at it. It looks to me like she says, go back to the effing room. There's nothing scary in the room. Agnifilo then says, 5 days later, he texts, I'm so sorry. She replies, LOL, I was just listening to, sorry, they are obviously getting over it. Cassie writes to Sean, how do I know if the drugs are going to be bad or you'll drink too much? This is about the hotel. So this has been their argument, you know, the entire time, Alexis, that this was not some guy pimping out his girlfriend for freak offs and being a sex trafficker and throwing her to the ground because he's a pimp or a sex trafficker. This is a guy who took some bad drugs, got mad about his girlfriend leaving with his phone. He's messed up and he did this and immediately regretted it. Does this resonate with the jury?
That video is very damaging. I mean, everybody saw that video, and it, you know, initially, although it seems like the defense is trying to desensitize the jury to it, I mean, it's horrible. It's horrible. You know, he's obviously beating her. I mean, the bottom line is he dragged her across the floor out of an alleged freak off. That's the allegation. I'm not sure that that particular item is going to resonate with them. I think that there's other things that they've had testimony that they had this toxic relationship, and it was a relationship, and he wasn't quote unquote pimping her. But that particular video, I think making that argument may not have been so great. I would have personally just argued it was a domestic dispute, and yes, the throwing in the phone I think was a good idea. I don't think the jury's going to buy that.
Yeah, it's a lot. I mean, when you see that video, and then obviously Cassie testified about this, but then you do have the text messages. So the jury's going to have a lot to talk about. I don't, you know, the jury is always told to rely on their life experiences and their common sense. And I wonder how many jurors can really have that life experience of being in this swanky hotel and being chased or chasing somebody down a hallway and throwing them to the ground like that. Not many, I don't think. So it's a lot. It's a lot. So let's, we're going to take a break. I think we need to take a quick break. We will be checking in with Sierra Gillespie here very soon outside of the courthouse, see if she got to the bottom of the whole Free Britney t-shirt issue, and maybe
asking for justice for Britney Spears and justice for survivors, which I guess in a way.
And just so it's clear, like, I have been approached by individuals that Cassie hired to represent them. I can't discuss the details of what they told me. One of them has a book that's out on, I think, Amazon. So the details of that interaction are out there, and the government didn't use him. The government talked to him. The government found out what he knew. He was supposed to be on the witness list, but he never testified. And the reason why I think he never testified is because the information he was giving hurt their case. It didn't necessarily help the defense 100%, but it certainly hurt the theory of the prosecution that Cassie was this innocent kind of person that was involved in this thing. She had no real, you know, meaningful relationships with these individuals, which just is not true. And she was calling and texting allegedly these individuals. Even when Diddy wasn't around, these texts were coming out. These individuals were on the list for witnesses for the government. The government chose not to use them. And I think very smartly chose not to use them because it showed her involvement was a lot deeper than just a participant. There was showed that, you know, she arranged things and talked to people and told them what she likes and all these other allegations that I think would come to light that would help the defense. But then there was also other things that would hurt the defense. That these individuals would speak about. This is a very difficult case for both sides. It's not a slam dunk, certainly for the government, which you find to be very unusual because they have a 99% conviction rate. And you would think that most of these cases are slam dunks. This is not anywhere near a slam dunk for all the charges. So it'll be interesting how Mark finishes up, but I think he's addressing it the only way you can address it. You have to have some compassion for the individual. At the same time, you have to express that this individual is not being truthful with you. There is more to the story here. These individuals that are saying, hey, I didn't want to do that, but by the way, here's a text that says, why are you buying Young Miami a purse? And I only got, a LV purse, and she's getting an Hermes purse. That doesn't feel right to me. I want an Hermes purse too. That doesn't sound like someone who's been sex trafficked.
It's complex and different for sure. It really is. It is. There is one thing I want to touch on. We have a lot to unpack, guys. Agnifilo said, Bradford, he thinks he's got an hour left. So we come back from lunch at 1:45. He's got an hour left. And then the judge said, Ms. Comey, so I'll charge at 4 or even 5. Because the feds get to do a rebuttal. If they charge the jury at 4 or 5, it's my understanding Combs has to be back at the MDC for head count at a certain time. Like he can't just be hanging out at the courthouse all night for deliberations. So I'm not sure if he charges a jury at 4 or 5 tonight, they're not going to probably start deliberations, I would assume, until Monday, right?
Individuals who were charged, the juries that were charged 4 or 5 o'clock, and the judge kept the jury till 10. I had a case in Tampa that I won, by the way. But they kept the jury there till 10 o'clock at night because the jury was saying, oh, we can keep going. We can keep going. They came back the next day and we had a verdict before lunch. The key here is what the jury wants to do. No, Sean Combs is not going to hang out at the courthouse during the deliberations. But if there's any part of that the defendant needs to be back and present for, they will go get the defendant and bring them back and into the courtroom to be present for that. My guess is because of the logistics, because of the craziness, because of where he's being held, and if he's going to be held downstairs at the federal courthouse or if he's going to be transported back, all these different kind of things. My guess is that the judge would say, hey, let's come back on Monday and start fresh Monday morning. But not every federal judge does that. I've had state judges, federal judges. I've gone till 10, 11. It's one of those things that it's up to the federal judge. This judge seems like the kind of judge that would dismiss the jury for the weekend and come back on Monday. But, I've been wrong, at least 1% of the time. So who knows how this is going to go.
That's quite the batting average, Bradford.
I do okay. I do okay. I'm like the Feds. I'm like the Feds, except I'm on the other side.
Let's give you guys a little bit of an update because we have a lot to talk about. So the Combs family has exited the courthouse. Somebody has fallen outside the courthouse. We're trying to figure out who fell. So please don't take that and run with it. Somebody fell. We don't know who. As soon as we find out, we'll let you know who fell. But I don't know. There's been so much talk throughout this trial about him having to be back at the MDC by a certain hour for the head count and the U.S. Marshals being stretched thin already. I don't know if I see them carting him back to the MDC and then bringing him back. Like, let's say there was a verdict tonight, or I just don't know if I see it happening. So they could be back on Monday. We'll get back to you when we know more information about that. Mauricio, I want to go now to you about the recording of Cassie. Of course, we can all understand being really upset if a recording of us, or we heard like we had a sex tape or whatever, and it's going to get out, and we're famous, and oh my God, it's going to ruin my career and whatnot. We'd all be really upset. But she's saying, I am going to cut you. I am going to bury you. You are going to be dead. I mean, can you even imagine? This is like a totally different side of Cassie Ventura. So how do you think that tape plays? Because I'm not hearing, I'm hearing somebody who sounds like they are, yes, she might just be making threats because she's like, do not do this or I will kill you. But this sound like I'm going to cut you. I'm literally going to cut you up and bury you. Sounds very, very
Satanic.
harsh and wild. It's very. I don't know how else to phrase it.
Well, I mean, worse than that is when she says, "It's not going to be me. It's going to be somebody else." So she's already letting him know that, you know, I'm going to contract out this murder. The thing is that when I hear it, I don't know. She doesn't, you know, she doesn't strike fear in me. It sounds like someone that is extremely upset, a woman that's extremely upset because she was recorded without her consent. So it kind of hurts the defense as well because, yeah, if you hear it, yes, and they need to use it because they need to chip away at Cassie as with whatever they can. And the fact that she's making these homicidal threats is something that you definitely want to use to your advantage. But at the end of the day, you're hearing someone that's extremely upset because she's learning for the first time that these freak offs that she thought were not videotaped were videotaped. So it kind of goes with the theme of the government that he used these freak offs and he recorded it for his own benefit to be able to extort women later on, and specifically Cassie to continue to do these freak offs for his own perverted benefit. And listen, at the end of the day, you have the typical sex trafficking. You know, like people can envision like a van and you know, teenage girls being walked to like a seedy motel. But at the end of the day, the law is the law. And if you're you know, flying escorts from state to state and paying them money to perform, you know, sexual acts, and you are not a licensed pornography company, you know, you're breaking the law. So, and whether or not, you know, there was force, fraud, coercion, even if it was I videotaped you, or I'm saying I'm not going to pay your $10,000 a month rent, or I'm not gonna, you know, satisfy my commitment to make 10 albums and I'm only going to give you one. It's coercion. So that's, I think, the challenge for the government to explain to a jury that this doesn't have to be the seedy motel with the teenage girls to actually be a crime. And at the end of the day, RICO is a law,
and that's where
literally
they're going to try to tie in the Mann Act. Okay, remember earlier in the show we talked about the Mann Act, and we put it in the chat of where you could find the Mann Act at. Okay, so go and review, listen to, read what the Mann Act means, and you'll see how they're trying to tie that into Diddy.
Almost get anybody with. It's a bad law. You know, if they say that you did two things, boom, RICO. Now, they don't use it on everybody, you know, but they decided to use it against P. Diddy. And I agree with Bradford when this is a state case on steroids. This is not a federal case. And that's why juries, federal juries, and audiences that are watching this are not used to it, because the federal government doesn't go out on a limb and do this, but they've done it now. And now they're stuck. They're stuck with it, and they're trying to convince a jury of it, and that's going to be the greatest difficulty. And I think Mark is doing a good job, you know, with what he has. At the end of the day, you know, as lawyers, we're stuck with the facts of the case, and he's stuck with a defendant that is not liked. P. Diddy is not beloved. Biggie was beloved. P. Diddy is not beloved. People don't really love him. That's why you don't see people outside supporting him. Not only the fact that he's done, you know, bad things to women. You know, there's allegations of him urinating on women and doing a bunch of stuff that I don't want to get into. But in addition to not being beloved, the allegations in this case are not the type that people are going to support him. So, you know, the government has to deal with the situation that they put themselves in by deciding to charge this crime.
You know, Alexis, I know a lot of defense attorneys do not like the RICO statute, the racketeering statute, and they don't like the way it's been used and applied here. You said earlier you see the RICO, so you see it here. Do you think that the defense is making some good points, though, in their argument as they try to, from what we're hearing? I mean, I know it's hard without a transcript and a live feed, but they're saying basically, these women are not sex trafficking victims. They're people who had access to grind. They're jealous, you know. They're upset about Young Miami getting, you know, more attention, and she doesn't have to do all these freak offs, things of that nature.
Well, first, I agree with everything Mauricio said. I mean, the RICO statute was made, it was basically made to go after the mob and make it
Right.
easy for the government. So they have a very, if you've been charged with RICO, on top of the fact that it's a federal case and their conviction rate of 99% goes up even more. So, but that being said, I think that the defense is doing, like was said before, the best they could do. They are trying to convince the jury that, first of all, there's no RICO. All this is that we have a domestic dispute, and yeah, he was a horrible boyfriend, and he's playing women, and he treated them horribly. However, it is just a domestic relationship, and that does not rise to RICO. And I think that's the only real defense that they have. And don't forget, you know, the defense attorneys are very good attorneys. And Mark, I think if everybody remembers, actually ended up getting Michael Jackson acquitted. So, you know, he knows that you have to go after and attack the evidence, meaning the witnesses that have come on and said, no, you know, you were a jealous person, that you also had a temper, that you were part of this, and then we had a horribly toxic relationship, but this wasn't RICO. I wasn't trafficking you. I wasn't drugging you, that you knew what you were doing. You were a shrewd person as well, that I didn't groom you into doing this. Because then one of the things that the prosecution needs to, you know, really hammer in is that groomers tend to talk very nicely to the people that they're grooming. They tend to create that relationship where the victims a lot of times do have feelings and fall in love with the person that's grooming them. So that's not unusual. But I think that their defense is doing really well on closing, from what we've heard, that really hammering it in. This was a toxic relationship between consenting adults.
Bradford, I have a viewer question for you. This is from I am Sydney Sexton. I think this is a good one for you because you handle, you know, big name celebrities. You know, you have them as clients. If Diddy is convicted, do you think this opens the door for other celebs to be convicted? A lot of artists / athletes have paid women for trips. I find this to be an interesting question because there's been some scuttlebutt that the feds are kind of using this as a test case, and you know, it could open the floodgates for them to go after other celebrities if they get a conviction here.
I think it's a dumpster fire. I think this case is a case that they attach themselves to, and they don't really. I don't think they anticipated the type of testimony that they were going to get from certain individuals when they were interviewing certain individuals. I don't see this being a test case to start charging every celebrity under the sun. I think this was an unusual case where the press picked it up. It was sex, drugs, and rock and roll. It was a violent act on video, caught on video. There were so many things that were attached to this that made it a attractive case for the feds to pick up. I don't see that being
Cassie's lawsuit against Diddy was so juicy, right? Remember how explicitly juicy it was. She told Diddy she was going to put a book out about it. And, you know, he ended up settling with her so quickly that the feds thought, you know, oh my God, from what this is seemingly looking like, this is a damn RICO case, you know, and that's what they did.
Being replicated. Again, anything can happen. Another video could come out suddenly and it could replicate itself. I just don't see it happening where someone all of a sudden sues, you know, Bob Smith for something, and the feds are like, oh, we need to pick this up. This was a very, very unusual case. The individual was unusual, high profile, billionaire, had these parties.
But that's what they did. They picked up Diddy from the lawsuit. Right after the lawsuit, Cassie filed against Diddy and settled like a day later. The feds came in and started raiding Diddy.
Everyone was at these parties, videotaping sexual events, videotaping other events that were not savory, and then the video of Cassie getting assaulted. All of those things, I think, created a perfect storm. Of course, the SDNY that loves high-profile cases so they can put on their wares, their talents, do a pony show. SDNY is always available for that. And that's what I think happened in this case. Do I think other jurisdictions would ever pick up something like this? No. I think this was specific for the jurisdiction. I think it was specific for the defendant. I think it was specific for these facts. I don't see it happening. Again, anything could happen. But there's been many, many, many lawsuits filed against many, many individuals. And this never happened. You know, you got football players that got, you know, multiple massage parlors, all these different things. And the feds never touch those cases because they're not attractive cases to them. In this case, he has money that they can seize. He's got homes that he can seize. He's got boats that they can seize. They'll say, oh, all these acts happened on a boat, or these acts happened in this house, or these acts happened on a plane. All of these things equal a federal case. There's nothing sexier to the feds than, number one, videotape of bad acts, and then number two, assets they can seize, money they can seize. That's kind of the jewel in the crown at the end of the rainbow if they do to get a conviction.
Yeah, we wouldn't be here if Cassie hadn't filed that lawsuit. And we all know that. You know, that's what started it all.
Thank you. Remember, tea sippers, as you come into the room, to like and subscribe. Put your teacups up so they can be filled with some DDT. We are live closing arguments. We're almost going to wrap up Diddy for the day and keep it pushing for the weekend. What is tea for the weekend? We are Tanisha Talks Teas, and thank you all for joining. All of my new sippers over on Kickers. Thank you, all my new kicks. That's been Sipping Tea with Tanisha. All my Twitchers that have been Sipping Tea with Tanisha. Thank you so much for following, subscribing on Twitch and Kick, YouTube and Facebook. Okay, let's continue on with the tea from Diddy. Live closing arguments. P. Diddy sex X trafficking trial. U.S. versus Sean Combs, day 32.
We have now Elizabeth Milner outside of the federal courthouse. We are going to check in with her. She has been inside court the whole time throughout this trial and all morning long. So good afternoon, Elizabeth. Can you tell me what is going on, or what has been going on, I should say, outside or inside court this morning? What have the jurors been doing? What's the reaction been?
Yeah, well, obviously today's a big day. It's the defense's closing argument. And I will say this, Anjanette. First of all, a lot's kind of going on. I got stuck on an elevator. I don't have my phone. So, Mom, I apologize if you're trying to text me right now. I don't have my phone with me. It's still locked up inside. But as far as just the tone of the closing arguments, it's a little bit different than how it was yesterday. And I'm going to just speak kind of frankly here, where Mark Agnifilo is super animated. And this is something that I kind of wanted from the prosecution in terms of just personalizing it for the jury, in terms of starting the closings off and thanking them for their time, thanking them for paying attention to everything. And then, of course, like, you know, as I'm talking to you right now, Anjanette, I'm moving with my hands, I'm talking with my hands. It's something I normally do, and that's kind of the way and the tone that Mark Agnifilo is doing the closing arguments in the same fashion. He even isn't standing kind of right at the podium when he's giving his closing argument. He's really kind of going back and forth and back and forth. He's showing demonstratives, he's showing posters, he's showing text messages in the forms of paper, but obviously the jury is able to see it on their jury screens. But in terms of just the tone, from what I could see at the start of closing arguments today, was that the jury was paying close attention. I think when you personalize a summation for the jury, where you speak to them directly, you thank them for their time, you thank them for their civic service, that I think it really kind of resonates with them. So all eyes obviously were on Mark Agnifilo today. Now, there were points during Mark Agnifilo's summation that I think maybe he might have been losing the jury in terms of just how long it was going. But again, like I had said yesterday, you know, if people can binge watch television shows for hours on end, I don't think a 4-hour closing argument is really just, you know, the longest thing ever. But I think maybe as we were getting kind of towards the lunch break, I think a lot of people might have been a little hungry. So, you know, I maybe saw people not paying or I shouldn't say they weren't paying attention. They were definitely paying attention. But I did see some peeks and glances over at the clock a couple of times. But it's possible that it was just the lunchtime. People wanted to eat, and so they wanted to know how soon they'll be able to eat, and then probably paying close once we come back from lunch break.
So the jurors, you said, we're looking at the clock, but it could have been the lunch break, but maybe boredom, or just not sure, or...
I think it was more towards the lunch hour, that especially as we were kind of slowly inching past like 12:30, 1 o'clock. So still, we're digesting hours and hours of summations already. So I think it was kind of towards the lunch time frame that they were kind of looking and glazing at the clock here and there, just probably wondering, when is lunch going to start? Something that maybe a lot of us had that question too.
Yeah, lunch is a good thing. Everybody needs lunch. Jurors, the court, everybody. So tell me, Elizabeth, there was Judge Submarinian. He said he was going to give a curative instruction to the jury. Maureen Comey asked for that. And she said it was because Mark Agnifilo made some improper comments. So talk to me a little bit about that. And what was there tension in the courtroom when this was going on?
It didn't seem like there was necessarily tension in the courtroom when this was going on, because mind you, Anjanette, the jury wasn't present when Maureen Comey stood up and told this to the judge. And let me just, for those who are unfamiliar with kind of what happened, this came after kind of a morning break. Maureen Comey mentioned that she didn't want to be interrupting Mark Agnifilo's summation, so she waited until the jury was dismissed for a morning break to kind of bring up these issues. And so the government was pretty much upset that Mark Agnifilo was telling the jury that they should consider the reason why the government brought charges against Sean Combs. They were saying that it's not the jury's job to be speculating on why the government is bringing about these charges against the defendant, and obviously the defendant being Sean Combs. The government said that Mark Agnifilo told the jury that the Intercontinental Hotel incident, that being the domestic violence aspect that the jury has seen kind of playing out in that surveillance video, they claimed getting everyone mixed up. The defense was saying that was a misdemeanor charge, and then the government said that that's mischaracterizing everything. There's a lot of ambulances going on, so I'm hoping that everyone can kind of still hear me. It seems like there was a little commotion going on when I was exiting court today, but I just wanted to make sure the sirens weren't too distracting. But even in terms of just what Mark Agnifilo was saying to the jurors in respects to arson and kidnapping, I think the government wanted to make clear that Sean Combs isn't charged with arson and kidnapping, that instead it falls under the predicate acts under RICO, which a lot of people seem to be kind of confused about in general, even outside of the courtroom, where I think people think Diddy is charged with kidnapping and arson and forced labor, all of that stuff. But again, that is a predicate act that's laid out under the RICO charge. And of course, count one is racketeering conspiracy, aka RICO. And so Agnifilo kind of was, I think, a little disappointed by the government saying this, and then the judge kind of taking into consideration giving the jury this particular instruction, mainly because he says that he thinks that he's allowed to be sarcastic. He says that his commentary while he's giving his summations is pretty fair, because if you think about it in contrast to the prosecution's closing argument, they for the most part were just kind of very monotone, methodical, really just kind of, it was the presentation here. They were kind of standing at the podium, reading off the notes. And again, this was Christy Slavic giving the closings for the government, whereas Mark Agnifilo, he has a different style. He was saying that his commentary was pretty much fair. And so after the morning break, the judge told Mark Agnifilo to not do it again, pretty much. He said that he called it improper and said that the jury shouldn't speculate why the charges were brought. And then Alexandra Shapiro also kind of chimed in terms of these arguments when we were brought back from the morning break, where she said what was done wasn't improper. She said that the judge called out Mark Agnifilo, but the judge kind of chimed in. He was like, I didn't call anybody out. AUSA Maureen Comey brought this to my attention, and so I'm just kind of trying to do what I need to do. But he read back the transcript to Mark Agnifilo too, where he said, look, you cannot be saying this. You cannot be having the jury kind of speculate on these types of things. And so Shapiro kind of, she clapped back a little bit, where she said Christy Slavic said that there were guns at freak-offs, and implied that the government got the law wrong when it comes to drug distribution and all of that stuff. But in the end of the day, the judge ended up giving those special instructions once the jury was brought back after the morning break.
And just so the viewers know, and kudos to you, Elizabeth, for making it through the sirens. I've been there. It's tough. It's tough. The government, wanted to get rid of the attempted arson, attempted kidnapping, just to streamline things. That's what they said they did. So I think there was just so much confusion about all of that when that letter came out. So let's just really quickly, and then we'll check in with Sierra. I wanted to ask you, what's Sean Combs doing during all of this? as his attorney is kind of making his final jury.
Yeah, because everyone, these closing arguments are a big deal. It is the final message that both sides will be able to deliver to the jury before they get the jury instructions, before they eventually go back to that room and deliberate. And so from what I could see of Sean Combs, because Anjanette, it was a packed courtroom in there, just kind of like it was yesterday. And it was the same kind of thing today. A lot of eyes are on kind of both sides to see what do they have to say in their final message to the jury. So from what I could see of Sean Combs, he really had all eyes focused on Mark Agnifilo. I think, and that was the same for everybody who was sitting at the defense tables, is that they had all their eyes on Mark Agnifilo as he's giving these final summations. It wasn't like when the government was doing their closing argument yesterday where you could see Sean Combs passing off notes to his attorneys. From what I could see of him today, he wasn't really jotting much down, if he was even jotting anything down. He really was just focused on what his defense attorney, and high-profile defense attorney at that, really had in his final message to the jury. So all eyes definitely on Mark Agnifilo today.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we will let you get back into court. Elizabeth, thank you so much, and go find.
We are going to leave off with law and crime and jump on over to something else and wrap up Diddy. Okay, until next week. Thank you guys for talking teas with Tanisha Talks Teas. Remember, when you come in the room, to like and subscribe as you're getting your teacup filled up. Drop those teacups in the chat. Let me know what you feel about the Diddy trial wrapping up. Do you think Diddy will go to prison? Do you think Diddy will get acquitted and go home to his family? Let us know in the chat. Let us know in the chat. Okay. Let's wrap it up with Court TV. Thank you, Court TV, for this amazing closing on Diddy trial. Remember, like and subscribe.
Team finished up their close, and at the very end, attorney Mark Agnifilo asked the jury to acquit Sean Diddy Combs of all of the charges and to send him home to his family. And with that, there are listening rooms because the main courtroom is packed. That's where I was this morning. And then there are these overflow rooms. There are multiple overflow rooms packed full of people from the public, from the media, so many people converging on New York City because of this trial.
Excuse me.
And in one of the rooms, I can confirm to you that when Mark Agnifilo finished, the room erupted in cheers. Everyone in the room started cheering, loudly clapping when his closing argument was finished. Mark Agnifilo giving that close on behalf of Diddy's legal team. Numerous lawyers taking part in this process for him. And from what we understand, Diddy was quite pleased with that closing argument. Now we're in the government's rebuttal. So that is currently taking place in the courthouse behind me. Diddy's trial happening at the very top floor of this building. We're in the Southern District of New York, and they actually have two federal courthouses, Michael and Ashley. This is one of them, the larger one. It is beautiful inside, and it is very hard to get a seat in that courtroom. But I will tell you, when I was in there this morning, Diddy looked to be in very good spirits. I saw him looking back at his children right before court started, giving them a big smile. And then during the break, when everybody was in the recess, people were milling about the courtroom and talking. The judge was off the bench, and I saw one of his twin daughters hand a piece of paper to attorney Tenny Garagos, Mark Garagos' daughter, who's one of the attorneys on the Diddy team. And she then handed that paper to Diddy, and he read whatever was on it, and then he turned back around, looked at his daughter, smiled really big and did a little bit of a fist pump, like to indicate, yeah, whatever it was, he seemed to be very happy about it. His mom looked to be in good spirits. I saw her leaving the courtroom during the break. I said hello to her. She said hello back. They all seem to be really leaning on each other, relying on each other for support, as his freedom, Michael and Ashley, is on the line. If he's convicted of that sex trafficking charge, it could be 15 years mandatory minimum. And there are two of them, one pertaining to Cassie, as you know, and one pertaining to Jane. And if he's convicted of the racketeering, could potentially be life.
Julie, I gotta say, tell me if I'm wrong. I want to get your of this closing argument by the defense was essentially that this was an overreach by the prosecution, that this was about the government going into somebody's bedroom, someone like Sean Diddy Combs, and although it's admittedly a bit of a bizarre sex life, it is his personal life. It didn't extend beyond that. Would you say that's a fair sort of assessment of the way they sort of characterized this approach to the prosecution?
Yes, Michael, you're exactly right. And I have to tell you both, Mark Agnifilo did a brilliant job connecting with the jury on that point. He is very engaging. His close was much different than the government's. The government, I have to say, while they were very thorough, very polished, very matter of fact, it was a little stiff. He talks to the jury just like he would be talking to someone at the breakfast table, maybe someone in his family. He cracks little jokes, and one of them actually pertained to this point you just raised, Michael. So he was saying how the federal government essentially invaded Sean Combs's private life and turned his bedroom life into a crime scene. And he joked, and I have to tell you, I saw 3 jurors crack up when he said, thank goodness the federal government got all of that Astroglide off the streets. They went in and they seized all those bottles of Astroglide and baby oil. Thank goodness we're safe from all of that personal lubricant. And 3 jurors, I saw all 3 of them, 2 women, younger black women, and then one, I would say middle-aged white man. All 3 of them cracked up and had big smiles on their face with that joke. And that was just one of the examples where we saw Mark Agnifilo really connecting with them and making this seem kind of ridiculous that the federal government would try to criminalize these desires to have sex involving multiple partners at hotels using baby oil or whatever else they want to use. He described it as Diddy being not the only one making homemade porn, so to speak, that this was just his lifestyle. It was a valid lifestyle, Michael and Ashley, is what the defense team argued very strongly this morning.
And if you would, Julie, remind us too how he balanced that with admitting some of the things that Diddy has done that aren't okay by using the video, for instance, and the domestic violence piece.
Sure, Judge. Thank you for that. Yes, he acknowledged that Diddy committed terrible acts of domestic violence. And he went so far as to say if he were charged with those crimes, he would be pleading guilty to them because he did them. And he said from the start of this trial, we've owned that. He did something that surprised me. I have to say, I thought he may kind of stay away from this hotel beating video, maybe just acknowledge it. He actually showed portions of it, Ashley and Michael, but not this portion right here that we're looking at. What he showed everyone was a cell phone in Cassie's hand when she initially left that hotel room. And you have to look really closely. I want you to pay attention to that mirror on the wall. It's going to be coming up on her right, our left, and you'll see the reflection of it. See it there? It looks like it has a white case. Hard to see. And look at Diddy's hands. Nothing in his hands as he goes to Cassie. So Mark Agnifilo used this to say, hey, this was terrible, this was illegal, this was wrong and inexcusable. But it was not about bringing her back to the room to traffic her. Look at his hand now. He's got the phone. He said this was about retrieving that cell phone that she took when she shouldn't have. That's what he said. He said the phone he believes belonged to Diddy, and he believes that was the reason he got so enraged and went after her, and we saw that terrible attack. So that was quite an illuminating portion of the argument, I would say, because we've looked at that video, I don't know how many dozens and dozens of times. And with her sweatshirt sleeve, unless you're looking at that mirror, it's really hard to see what she had in her hand or even to notice how he retrieved something. So perhaps that argument will be effective, perhaps not, in terms of whether the jury considers it sex trafficking.
Julie, one final thing I wanted to ask. It kind of jumped out at me during the closing argument by the defense, and that was a point where Mark Agnifilo said basically the winner in all this, because she got $20 million, he talks about it, the real winner of all this is Cassie Ventura. And I kind of took a quick back. I was taken aback by that because of all that went on, look, you can get money. We do know some horrible things did in fact happen to her. He even copped to it, said, look, we admit to the domestic violence and the violence in the relationship, yet he called her the one winner. I wonder if you had any notice as how did the jurors react to that? I thought that might have been a misstep.
Michael, I'm so glad you brought that up. That was quite a moment. And I've got a little more for you both. Wait for this. So when he brought that up, he started with saying that this was not a quest for justice for Cassie, that this was a quest about money. And we all know about the $30 million lawsuit that she filed, which was the catalyst for this case. And Agnifilo argued that had it not been for that lawsuit, then we wouldn't have this federal case here and now. And when he noted that Cassie is the winner in all this, he said that Diddy is the loser because he's the one who wound up in jail. And Ashley and Michael, I was a little bit stunned at that because, as you both know, the government cannot mention that he's incarcerated. The judge cannot mention that. We usually don't see defense attorneys mentioning that, but here he did. He took a moment, he gestured toward his client, he said to the jury, do you see that handsome man sitting behind Mr. Combs? That man is a U.S. Marshal. And he said that man is one of the agents who's tasked with taking him to and from his jail cell every day. When Cassie won, and she's somewhere around the world right now with $30 million, Sean Combs is locked up behind bars. And so that was quite a moment for two reasons. The jury learned that Diddy is incarcerated. They had no idea. Now he sits in the courtroom every day in his sweaters, looking very nice. They never see him brought in or handcuffed. And then two, as you both know, we never heard what the settlement amount was. Seems to me that Mark Agnifilo might have let the cat out of the bag because we know she asked for $30 million, but it was settled for an undisclosed amount. But today he said that she is somewhere around the world $30 million richer.
All right, y'all. We're gonna wrap it up with Diddy today. That was Diddy talks. Excuse me. That was Diddy deliberating today for his defense team, prosecution. Okay. So I'm going to shoot back up here. I got another breaking news case. I'm going to go and do a little something, come back and get back on the next breaking news. So I will see you all next week as far as Diddy is concerned, and just see what shakes and bakes for Diddy. Will he barbecue or will he mildew? Thanks for talking tea with Tanisha. Be back in a moment. Bye. Oh, and y'all drop, hold on. Y'all drop it down in the chat. What do y'all think about Diddy? Will Diddy barbecue or will he mildew? Will he be acquitted or will he be convicted? Let Tanisha Talks Teas know. And welcome all my new sippers on Kick, Twitch, Facebook, and YouTube. We are elevating and soaring. That's what T stands for, okay? To elevate and soar. So thank you for all my new tea sippers. See y'all in a minute, y'all. Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching. Remember to show your support by liking, subscribing, and sharing. It's a blessing. Keep your teacups filled and ready for my next upload. Until then, stay inspired and remember, always stay dipping. Thanks for watching. Remember to show your support by liking, subscribing, and sharing. It's a blessing. Keep your teacups filled and ready for my next upload. Until then, stay inspired and remember, always stay dipping.